Hello, welcome to episode 162 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today is the 22nd of April. So welcome everybody. I hope you've had a really lovely week since the last time I've spoken to you, and I'm here to share all the things that I've been making in the last 7 days. So today I have some knitting, I have some sewing plans to show you, but I haven't got any finished objects, but I thought I'd show you a couple of the fabrics that I've dug out of my stash and that I've got plans to sew this weekend. I have a couple of questions from the Ask Me Anything thread and a little bit of information on my shop update at the end of the podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Facebook as Craft House Magic, and I have my own website crafthousemagik.co.uk where you can find my handmade project bags, hand-dyed yarns, stitch markers, HiyaHiya knitting needles, HiyaHiya and Clover crochet hooks, and also bag making supplies. So we've got a couple of Makalongs going on in the Ravelry group and on Instagram at the moment, and they are craft 20 a day, which is chipping away at those larger projects to get them finished, and the Makalong goes throughout the whole year, but I will be drawing for prizes throughout the year. We also have the Spring Shawl Along 2021, which is basically knitting those shawls. Whether it's a summer shawl, a spring shawl or a winter shawl, that's absolutely fine. It's just the Spring Shawl Along, and it can be a wrap, a shawl, and it can be any sort of craft. If it's that sort of thing, join in. So let's get on with the good stuff, shall we? I have a finished object to show you today. Ta-da! So these are my Mayfield mitts by Erica Mount, and they are a gorgeous colourwork pattern that is a sort of a gauntlet mitten. So these I have knitted on 2.5mm needles, and the pattern actually says to use 2.25mm needles, so I did go up one size just to give myself a little more room. They fit really well round the hand, round the wrist. They are a little bit snug up here, but they're fine actually. I can wear them, and they probably stay up a bit better because they're a little bit tight at the top. So I would be tempted to make sure that you're hitting gauge, or at least measure how big it is supposed to be around this part of your arm, because you might need to go up a needle size for this bit here, because you don't actually change the number of stitches when it comes to your wrist. It stays the same all the way down the mitten. So there we go. They are really pretty. I love how the birds are sort of flying, and that you've got this leafy bit down the bottom, some floral detail around the cuff, and it's finished off with some 1x1 twisted rib. I really like this repetitive pattern on the inside of the gloves as well. I really enjoyed knitting this bit actually, because it's really intuitive. Once you've sort of got the rhythm of knitting that bit, you didn't really have to look at the pattern again, but obviously for this bit here you did. I did find that the leafy bit was the sort of least intuitive bit, so I had to keep checking where I was in the pattern. But I'm really pleased that I finished them. They're so pretty. And I knitted them in some Rauma Finullgarn in 2 different colours, like a pale sort of purple and a darker pink, so that there's a subtle contrast, not too much. And they're all sort of ready for the cooler weather, but we are coming into spring now. So hopefully we will get a bit more of a spring this year. But they'll be ready for the cooler weather when it comes along. So I knitted them in these HiyaHiya flyers that I've got. So you basically get 3 needles that have got short needles, 3-inch needles either side with a bendy bit in the between, and you have 2 on the work, and then you use your 3rd one to sort of work along them with. You sort of treat them as if you're using 2 circular needles, if that makes sense. So it's like a cross between a circular needle and a DPN. But I found that these are a good alternative to using 9-inch circulars for colour work, because it's easier to regulate your tension on the edges of the work compared to magic loop. But I find with the 9-inch circulars sometimes my hands can cramp up a little bit, and I find these slightly easier to grip. They've got a 3-inch needle tip and they're 8 inches in length, so I definitely found them much easier than the 9-inch circulars for me personally, but I must admit, when I was doing the 1x1 twisted rib, for some reason I find it more difficult to purl with them, but for all the colour work, they're absolutely brilliant. So I am a fan of these. So these particular ones are interchangeable ones that I've been using, because these are the sort of test set that I purchased from the wholesale before I started to stock them in my shop. But I actually have just got the fixed ones in my shop. But the only difference is they're completely fixed and the cable is a blue colour rather than this pink. But they work exactly the same. So I definitely recommend these if you want a sort of alternative to DPNs and Magic Loop. So, because I'd finished something, I needed to cast something on. So I have cast on a sock. And these are going to be some shorty socks, but they are made of a cotton yarn, which I thought was really interesting. So my friend Alison sent me a ball of this. This is what it looks like in the ball. And it is called Regia Cotton Colour Tutti Frutti 2. And it's, let me just put it round there so you can sort of see. And this is what it sort of looks like when it's finished. But it's actually made of 72% cotton, 18% polyamide and 10% polyester. And actually, if you look at the yarn itself, it's got quite a bit of stretch in it, which is nice. So I'll be really interested to see how they wear and how they feel on my feet once I finish those. So like I said, my friend Alison sent me these last year. I didn't get round to knitting them up before summer because I thought cotton would be better to wear in the summer, but now I'm going to get them sorted so that I can wear them this summertime. So they're going to be shorties. So I think I'm going to do a heel flap and gusset heel on these rather than a short row heel. And I'm not going to do much more leg than this, but it's really coming out really pretty. But I will see if I can find a link to where you could get this from if you want to find some for yourself. So far it seems like it's got plenty of sort of stretch. It does feel slightly sort of denser fabric, I think. I've stuck with a 2.5mm needle for this. I'm doing it on Magic Loop, but we shall see how it feels like when it's on. So I'm going to do a really quick little sewing section now, because I haven't actually sewn anything this weekend. We've been really busy doing some painting in the house, so that's taken up loads of time. But hopefully this weekend I'll get some time to sew. So I've picked out this fabric, and this is an art gallery fabrics, and it's a jersey with this gorgeous floral print. And I did have a metre of this to make a t-shirt with, but I bought a few metres not that long ago, and I wanted to make another Zadie dress. And what I'm wearing is a Zadie dress. With this one I've done a contrast panel at the front, but I would do the same fabric all over with this. But the Zadie dress has got brilliant large pockets in, so I thought I'm going to make that up into my Zadie. And I also bought this fabric, and this is from Elzah Fabrics, and this is another cotton jersey, and it's got a gorgeous coral flowers on a navy background, so I want to make this up into the same dress as well. And I think because they're really different flowers, it'll look quite different when it's finished. So with the Zadie dress, you can have a sort of longer sleeve, or there is a really short sleeve that comes in the pattern, but what I did is I modified the sleeve piece just to come as a short sleeve rather than being a very, very short sleeve as it is as an alternative sort of sleeve piece in the pattern. So I've got a slightly longer short sleeve here, if that makes sense. So my plans are to get these two sewn up this weekend, so you'll have to see if I'm actually going to follow through with this. But I've dug them out and they are out on the side ready to use. What I might do is cut them both out and then sew the whole of one dress first and then go on to the next one. Because I'll probably need to use, I'd say, a navy cotton for this one and a grey for this, just to sort of match with the background. And it'll be awkward to sort of change the thread on my overlocker on my sewing machine all the time if I switch from one to the other, if that makes sense. But I have a couple of questions from the Ask Me Anything thread. And the first question is from Anita. And Anita has got a podcast called Gaga Knits, and she's a lovely lady from Wales that does all sorts of crafts. So if you're looking for a podcast, I do recommend popping over and looking at Anita's podcast as well. I'll leave a link in the description bar down below. And her question was, what do you do with the squares of interfacing that you get left from project bags? Now, I don't actually use interfacing in my project bags very often. I don't like the feeling of standard interfacing in the way that once it creases, it never really presses the same. So what I tend to use is use wadding inside my bags, and then when it sort of gets a bit creased up, you can actually give it a wash, give it a press, and it's back to normal really, rather than having that extra bit of creasiness. I think actually if you used a woven interfacing, I wouldn't mind that so much, because it's more like a cotton fabric with an adhesive backing that you can iron onto the outer fabric. But I do have lots of little squares of wadding left over from my bags, and I sometimes, if they're big enough, I will zigzag stitch a couple of pieces of wadding, little squares of wadding together if I just want it for a small project. Although I do get a lot of scraps, so I tend to, if I'm accumulating lots of squares of interfacing and things, I collect them up in a bag. And actually my local charity shop, I'm able to take scrap fabric there, clean, dry scrap fabrics, and they get recycled, which is really good. So it can be anything from polyester to cotton, but any sort of fabrics can be put all together, and it's normally labelled clean fabric waste, and then they do a collection, which is lovely. I'll just drop it off at my local charity shop, and I think that's really good. So it's the charity shop that collects it in Norfolk, at least, is the Big C charity, and there's a big charity shop that isn't far from here, and it's like a hub for all the crafty bits and bobs, so they tend to collect there most often. So when I pop to Wyndham, I tend to go and take it to the Big C charity there, which is really useful. So it isn't just getting chucked away into landfill, which I hate the thought of. So anything like the ends of zips, scraps of fabric that I cut off from selvage, but I do actually collect the little squares that I cut off of the fabric, because I think, oh, I'll make something with that. And actually this box here is absolutely jam-packed with scraps that I need to use that were just the quilting cotton. Yes, I've got a lot more jersey scraps elsewhere, but I do keep hold of sort of fabric that I think I might be able to piece using sort of quilting techniques and things. Anyway, I shall stop waffling. I didn't answer that question very concisely, did I, Anita? But hopefully that makes sense. So I have another question from the Ask Me Anything thread, and it's from Jennifer, and she was asking, what is my absolute favourite cake? Now, it is very difficult because I'm quite a fan of all the cakes. But if I had to choose one, I would say a chocolate fudge cake with a chocolate ganache dripped all over the top with flakes of chocolate all piled and maybe some sort of chocolate balls on the top as well to give an extra bit of decoration, because I don't think you can ever really have too much chocolate on a chocolate cake. Because of course it would obviously be very rich, so I'd need either some ice cream or some cream to go with it to sort of balance the flavours out. So that would probably be my choice. But I am partial to a bit of lemon drizzle and also Victoria sponge cake as well. So, but pretty much any sort of cake is my cup of tea. So thank you for those questions, Anita and Jennifer. I do have a few more that I haven't answered yet from the Ravelry group and from emails as well. So I will be answering those next week. But if you have any more questions, if you either pop onto the Ravelry group, the Ask Me Anything thread, and pop your question there, or email me on crafthousemagik@gmail.com, and I will try and answer as best I can. So I've just got my shop update to tell you about now. So I have the May yarn clubs going in the shop tomorrow. That's the 23rd of April. And the music from the movies inspired sock sets, or the mini sets inspired by like a mixtape of all my favourite songs. So there'll be 5 20-gram minis for the mixtape minis, and there'll be a 100-gram full skein and a 20-gram mini skein for the sock sets, for the music from the movies inspired sock sets. There's more information on my website if you want to read up a bit more about them, and they're available on a variety of bases which you can find about there. I'll leave a link in the description bar down below if you want to find out more. There's a page on my website where I have details of the yarn clubs when the actual listing's not up there, so you can find out some information, and also it tells you what date the listings will be up, and also when those yarn clubs will be shipped in each month. So for May's yarn club, it will be shipped the 21st of May. So the listing for the May yarn club will be open from the 23rd of April until the 7th of May. So you have plenty of time to purchase the yarn clubs over that period, and I will mention it on the podcast next week if you want me to remind you to pop over there if it's sort of payday or anything. What I do is, if you're actually subscribed to my newsletter, every time I have the new yarn clubs in the shop, or when I have a new item in the shop, I will send an email out to remind everybody that I'm putting that up. And the email will actually only go out when it's gone live, so you know you can then go straight to the website to check those things out. So also what I wanted to mention is that I'm switching over my BFL base to all high twist. So previously I use a high twist yarn for the sock sets for the BFL base, and I've then used a 75% BFL and 25% nylon non-high twist base for the sort of mini sets. But I'm actually switching over to all high twist so that it's less confusing on the website. So instead of it being the 75% Blueface Leicester and 25% nylon on a non-high twist base, it will then be on an 80% Blueface Leicester, 20% nylon high twist base, which I think is just a nicer, slightly more plump BFL. So that'll be the case for all of the BFL 4-plies on my website, so I hope that makes sense, and I'll make that clear on the listing as well. I will also be adding DK sock sets to all my colourway listings. At the moment you could only click on a single skein of DK weight yarn, but I will add the DK sock sets as well to all my colourways, and I should hopefully be finished by the end of the day tomorrow, so that it'll come live in line with the shop update with the yarn clubs in as well. Next week I will be introducing some animal print bags, so watch out for that. But that's all for today. I'm sorry it's a bit of a shorter episode, but I'm hoping to have a craft-filled weekend. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in the next episode. Bye!